he converted many of them and they became the
Maplas.
Mapilas. Yeah, and so much later in 1921 you have the Mopla
Rebellion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a carryover of this time. And you have the United Nations Convention on prevention of the crime of genocide.
Nazi, yeah.
In 1948, just after the World War. It clearly says if there is an intent to actually target someone on the basis of identity, race, color, religion, sex, whatever, religion and everything. So that is actually termed as genocide. So by that standards also, even of today's standards of definition, we can call this as a genocide of the Hindus and Christians of South India because they faced that because of who they were. It's very kosher to say all this thing, oh, it was all, everybody was violent. But tell me examples where the Wadayars also, they were also cruel in their wars earlier. In Mysore, the practice was of the opponent, they cut off the ears and noses, and malas are made of ears and noses and tied to fortresses, as grotesque that would sound.
The first decade of Tipu's rule, and I'm reading out from the book, the Nayars and the people of Malabar continue to suffer the worst of tortures. So he says killing, converting, circumcising, breaking temples, defiling them, feeding them beef.
Yeah.
Then the mockery of the matriarchal system of Kerala, polyandry in Coorg, these were then he goes on to write, he mentions about the Portuguese Roman Catholic missionary who stayed in Malabar, who writes and talks about Tipu, and he says this is about Malabar region, he first tied up the mothers and then suspended the children from their necks. The cruel tyrant, writes this Portuguese Roman Catholic missionary, he says the Christians and heathens, which is Hindus, were to be brought out naked, made fast to the feet of elephants. That means they were tied to the feet of elephants, which were then obliged to drag them till their limbs fell off in pieces. And these are gory details I'm reading out just so that you rethink if you are talking about Tipu the Brave One. Drag them till their limbs fell in pieces from their bodies. Why? Just because they are non-Muslims, they are Christians and Hindus. At the same time, he ordered all churches and temples to be burned or pulled down and destroyed in some manner. Christian and pagan women, which is Hindu women, were compelled to marry Mohammedans. The pagans were deprived of the token of their nobility, which is a lock of hair called kudumbi, kudumi. And every Christian who appeared in the streets must either submit to be circumcised or hanged on the spot. This was in 1789, so it wasn't too long ago that it happened. There are living memories of this. This is in the Malabar region.
And that's why it was called the Padayotta Kalam, the military regime, which is a lot of Malayalam literature and so on, is rife with that. And I think Sridhar Menon, one of these scholars there, writes what it did to Kerala's social and economic, conditions. What was, we were speaking about a fertile land, so much of greenery, agriculture. Most of the peasants, they ran away either to the hills or to the forests. And so agriculture almost dwindled. What was a wonderful green land became a cheerless desert almost. Pepper trade, almost collapsed. The ports of Kerala, which was buzzing right from the medieval times and, 8th, 9th centuries, they began to wear a deserted look. Industry, whatever trade, commerce, that almost,
So Tipu is not considered a hero even among Muslims in Malabar region?
No, so that was the thing. So he converted many of them and they became the Mapilas. Yeah, and so much later in 1921 you have the Mopla
Rebellion.
Yeah, it was a carryover of this time. And Sridhar Menon writes, so when these Moplas come back to Kerala, so much of social friction between the two communities, the few Hindus who had survived or the Christians who had survived and the Maplas. And so the social unrest, the cultural extermination, and to those who say, kingship is associated with violence, so everyone was violent. Of course, everyone was violent, but some were more violent than the others, and that is something to be noted. And you have the United Nations Convention on prevention of the crime of genocide.
Nazi, yeah.
In 1948, just after the World War. It clearly says if there is an intent to actually target someone on the basis of identity, race, race, color, religion, sex, whatever, religion and everything. So that is actually termed as genocide. So by that standards also, even of today's standards of definition, we can call this as a genocide of the Hindus and Christians of South India, because they faced that because of who they were, not because they were. So what were those poor peasants of Mangalore Christians or those Iyengar children? What did they do to him to actually come down like that on them? And why choose the sacred, days of their religious calendar?
Lent and
The Ash
Naraka
Wednesday and
Chaturdashi.
Naraka Chaturdashi. You could do it on any day. So it's cultural subjugation also, religious and cultural subjugation. So it's very kosher to say all this thing, it was all, everybody was violent. But tell me examples where the Vodayars also, they were also cruel in their wars earlier. In Mysore, the practice was of the opponent, they cut off the ears and noses, and malas are made of ears and noses and tied to fortresses, as grotesque that would sound. But how many, when they attacked, there was this Ranadullah Khan from Bijapur who was constantly attacking Mysore, and Ranadhira Kanthirava Narasaraja Vodayar, the famous, on whom Dr. Rajkumar also has a Kannada movie, he attacked him back. How many Muslims did he convert to Hinduism? So these things that people talk today to give a cover fire for atrocities like this, not calling it out for what it is, I think that is very, very dangerous. Denial. At least acknowledge the tortures that the ancestors of these communities have gone through, of which they carry a living memory, a living wound after 200 years. Forget the justice, they'll never get justice. And what justice, and from whom? The perpetrator and the victim are both dead. At least let history be a space where they can heal those wounds and not valorize and commemorate a man who has actually committed these worst of excesses against your ancestors.